Hi there, and welcome to Fellowship of the Ring Pull, a weekly gathering just to have a blether, chat about the music industry, show business, gear, and how we're all feeling, etc., etc. It's something I look forward to every week, just a bit of a safe house to come and have a bit of a chat. And I don't know, it's for me as a 53-year-old, I still marvel at technology, that it brings so many people from disparate parts of the world together. There is a Google Meet that you can join, so you can actually come and join in person, ask questions, and I think we're going to have a very special podcast today, potentially with a special appearance. So the Google Meet is linked down below in the video description. If you're joining on Instagram, you'll need to go to the YouTube to do that. But hello to people on Instagram too. We're also on YouTube, so excuse me if I spend most of my time looking this way, because that's where the screen is, where the people will appear. I've got a couple of things just to talk about. We'll probably start like we did last week with some questions that were left over from last week to get the ball rolling. But I'd be really interested to know if any of you visited NAMM and if you saw any goodies that are going to break my bank or other people's banks, if there was anything that really caught your eye, if anyone had any thoughts on this new E013, which I've been thinking about a lot and I'm still trying to get my head round. Yesterday, we released the Tina Guo Storm Cello Library. The demand for it has been unprecedented. As a consequence, our servers are struggling a little bit with the downloads. My advice to you at this moment, we are looking into it, but my advice to you at the moment is just to be patient. If you've got a stuck progress bar, or it's stuck, for me, it hanged at the very end. Just go and make a cup of tea or something like that would be my recommendation at the moment. But we are looking into it with our server partners and all of that kind of stuff. So apologies if you're experiencing frustration there, and I really appreciate your patience. Second of all, we did a piano book this week, and I'm putting back like 29 packs, and I did it conditionally, which no one seemed to moan about, which I'm very thankful for. And the condition was that people subscribe to Beep Boop Audio, our great friend and really good contributor to Piano Book Stroke Audio Inc. And that's Owen Bolig, and basically he was close to 1,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. And for many people who don't have YouTube channels, you may not realize, but basically when you're under 1,000, there's all sorts of features that you can't get your hands on until you get over 1,000. So the condition was to get Owen over 1,000 subscribers. He now has nearly 1,400 subscribers. So thank you so much for doing that. But if you haven't seen that video, do go to Beep Boop Audio, Owen Bolig, subscribe. There's lots of juicy content there. And also, he's done an amazing reverb. Let's support young developers and people who offer so much back to the community. He really is a good bloke. I went out to visit him in Nashville, where he lives. Alan, a couple of questions from last week.
Yeah, we had one asking, what's the largest ensemble that you've written for?
The largest ensemble I've written, well, actually the first kind of major orchestral session I did was one of the biggest, and it was about 95 players. And it was the one and only time I've ever worked in Prague. And this is quite some years ago. It was for a Mandy Moore film called Chasing Liberty. And there's a lot more experience of working east these days. There wasn't such a kind of an exodus east back then, so we were very much a little bit guinea piggy at that point. And what we didn't realise was that the middle C in the former Czech Republic is different from ours, or rather the A. It's not 440. I think it was 443, 444. And it was interesting getting players to play at an intonation that they weren't used to. These days, they actually vary speed the Pro Tools rigs so that they can play in their natural tuning. And it was unusual because a Celeste turned up. That was at 440. And then I think glockenspiel came in, and that was at 4/4/3. So it was a bit of a fix it in post job. I've done some big choral sessions as well as orchestras, but I find if I was to recommend anything, we're always working on budgets and stuff, and I think that the tendency is to really, really get as many strings as humanly possible. And I think once you're past kind of, say, 8 down, so 8 firsts, 6 seconds, that kind of stuff, depending on the room, if you're planning to use a mixture of samples and orchestra, I would say, and you can afford more than, say, I don't know, a 26 or a 30-piece string band, I wouldn't use your resources to get more string players. There's kind of, what's it called, diminishing returns. Whereas just putting a bass clarinet in there, Alan's nodding at the back there, or a trumpet or some textural stuff, what you'll get with maybe 3 trumpeters, 3 horns, or some woodwinds, I think will give you much, much bigger returns than just going, I want to go from 30 to, say, 36 strings. The thing I always do as well with these big sounding soundtracks is I'm very cautious about divisying stuff that samples are perfectly capable of doing. So if you're finding that you're creating very layered string sections, I would just try and pick the 5 voices, or 4 voices really, but 5 voices within basses up to the firsts. I would try and stick to that and not divisi. Say, for example, if you're layering harmonics and stuff like that, I'd just leave the samples doing that. And the other thing that I would do as well is, if there are large sections using pizzicato, I'd just let the samples do those, provided they've been programmed well with lots of velocity layers and stuff like that. I wouldn't go, we need a really big section because there's this big pizzicato part. So that would be my recommendation, is the minute you get above, say, 8 first violins and down to maybe 6 celli and 3 basses, I would start investigating different tonal colours that you can put in there. I've done lots of sessions with maybe 24 strings and 1 bass clarinet right in the middle, and it just adds this extra textural thing that you can do. The other thing that's great about maybe incorporating some brass players into an orchestral session is, if you're looking to do very rich harmonies, instead of divisying the strings, brass are great at doing thick harmonies down just above the double basses. They'll still cut through because of that brassiness. So that would be my recommendation. But certainly, sorry, I've got a bit of a cold. Certainly when I'm writing a score, I'm very, very conscious of the band that I'm writing it for, and I make all sorts of budgetary considerations whilst I'm writing. I'm still, first and foremost, a craftsperson, a head of department, before I am an artist. So I consider how I spend other people's money wisely. And there was another one, wasn't there, Alan?
Yep. Someone asked a question, what's the best or favourite session you've worked on?
What's the favourite session I've worked on? Oh, that's a thought. Alan actually told me this in the pub earlier, and I've forgotten and didn't think about it. But I would have to say it was the main sessions for Alien Isolation. That was a real pinch me moment. They managed to secure the rights to 3 of Jerry Goldsmith's cues, and it's quite interesting. For Alien, a lot of the music from Alien wasn't written for Alien by Jerry Goldsmith. It was written by Jerry Goldsmith, but it was actually written for a film about Sigmund Freud. So as a consequence, it's a very much a hacked together music edited score, the original Alien score. So it was very interesting, as my main role within that writing partnership was to basically elongate Jerry Goldsmith's Alien score out over the duration of the game. And the flight, my brother and Alexis, who I worked with, they very much handled a lot of the action stuff and the in-game stuff. I did more of the cutscenes and that kind of stuff. So it was really interesting to try and get into the mind of Jerry Goldsmith. And I think I might be doing a video soon about the making of the Alien Isolation score. It's 10 years old, but it's become a bit of a classic. And all I can say about Jerry Goldsmith is slow jazz down massively, and you get Jerry Goldsmith. But yeah, so those are some talking points to talk about, but I'm also really interested if anyone visited NAMM this year. I wasn't able because we had this big, massive Tina Guo release, and I thought it would be better to stick around in town with my team to support them in that enterprise. And so I'm really excited and interested to hear how that was and how it felt out in LA. So should we welcome some people in on the Google Meet, Simon? Here we go. Oh, lots of lovely pictures. Hi there, Kent.
Hey, how are you?
Not too bad. How are you doing?
Doing well. Procrastinating a little bit, but doing well.
Well, that's what we're here for. I've had a recent diagnosis of ADHD, and it was quite interesting. It's now kind of really, I'm being fed it in my algorithm. And there's been a couple of things that I've found really interesting for anyone who feels they may be that way inclined. Certainly procrastination does tend to point towards it. Basically, we're not motivated like people who aren't neurodivergent. We're motivated by interest, variety, and fear. So what we tend to do is procrastinate to the point of sheer and utter horror and fear, to kind of force us into our working chair. The other thing I saw recently on an ADHD Instagram was I've always questioned whether I have ADHD because I don't, well, maybe people will beg to differ. I don't have hyperactivity as far as I'm concerned. And this professor said, how about inside your head? And you go, oh yeah, no, I'm very, very much hyperactive. I don't know if there's anyone else.
There's a fun quote by composer Bruce Broughton who said, you don't find inspiration like you do with a deadline.
Yeah, exactly. That's my thoughts exactly. Jay's joined us. How are you doing, Jay?
Listen, this new library is so good. I got distracted and burned my toast.
Oh, you're using it.
Yeah, I just downloaded it and I left it downloading and installing. Went to make some toast because I was like, I'm gonna eat before this. Came back and got distracted playing with it because it was installed. I was like, hell yeah, burn my toast.
Can we please use that as a quote on the website? I got so distracted by this library, I burnt my toast.
Yes, please use it because I was like, oh, right, smoke. Bad. It was beautiful, though. It's sounding really good.
Oh, that's fantastic. We're joined by some, I don't know if we've seen your face before, Inner Force Music. How are you doing?
It's Chris. I'm doing well.
Where are we speaking to you
Cheers.
from?
I am in Connecticut, USA. So it's chilly. And I just wanted to say Glass Strings. I love it. I'm actually scoring a short film right now, and it's become a primary backbone to a lot of it.
Fantastic.
So.
I've just been given.
Just grab.
Sorry.
What's that? Go ahead.
I've just been given a wave. I'll definitely come back to you. But I've just been given a wave because we're about to be joined by someone very special. Would you like to welcome this person in? Hey, Tina.
Hello, Tina.
How you doing? I think you're muted. Is that correct? No, you're unmuted. No.
Hello.
Oh, hi. How you doing?
audio professional here. Sorry, struggling to figure out how to unmute myself. I'm good. How are you guys? I'm so happy to be here.
Oh no, it's great to see you, and we're really delighted to the response for your library. Which I'm so proud of this collaboration, and it seems to be going really well, Tina.
Thank you. I'm super grateful. I mean, I've been reading all the comments. I actually was on the chat a little bit earlier, just like, talking to people. Hi, everybody. And I have this weird look. I'm in my hotel room because I'm on tour right now. There's this weird lamp behind me, and it just keeps like trying to hide it. But
Your halo.
Looks like a halo, and we're also
yes.
We've got Dot here as well, who's waving.
Hi there. Hi. Nice to see everyone.
Excellent stuff.
Hello.
And so Tina, it's I had so much fun doing the trailer music for your with your library. I don't know if you realise that trailer I didn't use any sounds that weren't from the library. So I noticed that there's some articulations with you hitting the cello. I use those as like taiko drums and stuff. But are there any thoughts that you have on the library?
Well, first of all, I'm just really, really excited that it's finally out. Steve and I have been working on it for the last 2 years, on and off, because busy working on other film projects and then touring. So it's so exciting to finally have our baby released out into the world in partnership with you, Christian, so our mutual child. It's really great. And I love the trailer that you did. I didn't hear it prior to it being released. And I love that you incorporated some of my inner violence into it as well. So
when I was speaking to you, I was worried about if we were going to make things too dark, and you said something about liking dark.
Oh, yes. I love dark.
Well, we've got a little video that's about a minute and a bit long about a very exciting competition. So if you let Alan run that, I'll get straight back to you, Tina. There we go. So Tina has really kindly offered up the opportunity of someone basically who is going to take part, hopefully, in this trailer competition, to get an hour of your time, Tina, for you to maybe lay some stuff down for their music. You're on tour and stuff, and it's busy, but you do a lot of remote sessions and stuff like that, don't you, for like A-listers?
Yes, I do. Actually, very thankfully, luckily for me, even prior to COVID, I would say like 90% of my work has been remote from my home recording studio. I just find that it's a lot more efficient, personally, just because I'm a bit OCD. And I have a very structured way of working, and I work a lot more efficiently that way, which is better also for the client if you are paying by the hour. So it's a win-win for everybody. And yeah, I'm really, really happy to offer 1 hour of recording time for the winner's project. So I'm super excited to hear everyone's music.
And indeed, you don't have to use Tina's library to do the trailer. Obviously, we'd love it if you did. But also, something we are saying is for people who have downloaded it and are using it, we're so interested to hear what you do with it, because it's a very, and I'm not doing a kind of mega plug on the podcast, I really am genuinely very excited about this collaboration. I was surprised at how deep the library is. So I imagine there's people are going to find different bits that they love and stuff. And we've suggested that you use the hashtag Stormcello so that both us Crow Hillers, Steve and Tina, can check out what you're doing. Isn't that right, Tina?
That is correct.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I noticed when your cello came in, a tiny little smile came across your face. When you are, say, I don't know, anywhere, watching a film or a TV show, can you recognize your cello straight away?
Yes, actually, sometimes it's a little distracting. Because then, of course, you start analyzing yourself and, oh my gosh, I could have done that better. Oh God. So it sometimes it's hard to take yourself out of it. But of course, I'm always also excited, like a 5-year-old, always, every time too. So it's beating myself up, but also being excited at the same time.
I always say when you hear a bit of your music, it's a little bit like that thing that parents have where they're in a crowd of children screaming, they can hear their child. I think that you get such a personal relationship with your own sound. I have this thing with this soft piano that I think has been downloaded something like 10 million times. And I just hear it on everything because one of the notes I misplayed with my fingernail and it winds me up something rotten.
Well, I don't have soft piano. I shall go download it immediately right after this.
But before you go, Tina, Jay, I'd love you to tell Tina what she's responsible for.
Oh my God, yeah. So I'm plugging myself in here, but I won one of the challenges earlier a couple months ago, and your library being the next in line of releases, I got it for free. I got the email this morning, and a couple of hours ago, I was like, oh, right, I got this. Cool. I downloaded, installed it. In the meantime, while it was installing and I was waiting for this to happen, I went to set myself up a little breakfast toast, and I came back to check on my phone. It was installed. I opened it, started playing, and burned my toast.
Oh,
like it was so good. It was so good. I was distracted and burned my toast.
So
that's a very big compliment. Thank you.
So that's fantastic. So are you on tour, about to go on tour? Where are you at?
Yes, I am on tour. I'm in my hotel room here in Austin, Texas. We play tomorrow night with Hans at the arena here, and it's a super short tour. So we're squishing in 5 dates in the US in only 10 days. So I will be home in 10 days to go back working on other music and perhaps recording for the winner of this situation that we have happening.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And then are you back out in Europe?
That would be later this year. And so I'm doing that. I also have some unannounced solo dates, which again are to be continued. Please stay tuned, check out my socials, blah, blah, blah. And everything will be updated in at the appropriate time. But for right now, I'm really focusing on this. I call her lovingly Robo Guo number 3. 3.0. I'm really proud of it. And I'm so happy to have read, so many comments. I do read like literally everything everybody writes, and I try to respond as much as possible. And I'm really grateful because you never know what reactions are going to be, especially on the internet where, everyone's just free for all. And I was bracing myself for the worst, but actually really pleasantly surprised that it was all, I would say predominantly like 99% positive, which is a huge relief. So thank you guys.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant, Tina. And thank you so much for coming on. And thank you so much for offering up some of your time for a competition winner. I think that would be absolutely fascinating. I did also notice that you'll be playing Glasgow when you're over later in the year. So I will, and this is not a threat, this is going to happen. I'm going to drag you across to Edinburgh and walk you up Crow Hill.
Okay, perfect. I look forward to it.
Brilliant. So lovely to see you, Tina.
Thank you. Thank you.
See
Bye,
you later.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
That was such a lovely, lovely gesture there from Tina, who is just fantastic. And as I suggested in the video yesterday, a force of nature. She really has that spark about her. And I think maybe it would be lovely at some point to talk to Tina about how she's approached her career and how she uses social media as a very kind of key part of her brand and stuff. So really, really interesting. So Inner Force Music, I don't actually know your actual name, but we were talking to you and I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. My name is Chris Cowett.
Hi, Chris.
On Wayfarer Records, actually. So, no, I got hired to do a score for a small film / documentary. And right about that time, I start Glass Strings. You had just recently released Glass Strings, and I'd listen to them like, ooh, I bet you this will work. And then sure enough, here it's getting used heavily. So I just layer that with some Spitfire stuff, and then immediately got the cello library yesterday. And I've got an Osmos, so I started playing the two together. I'm like, okay, I got them ideas already for your competition. This is gonna be great.
Brilliant stuff. Well, it's good to see you, Chris. And it's lovely to see you, Charles. How are you doing?
Is my mic on for you?
It is. That's a big thumbs up.
Okay. I'm recuperating from travel because we went to NAMM. So
how was it?
You know how that goes. It was really interesting. I went down there to meet the owner of Megatrax. You know, I'm writing music for their library. And then I met one of their executives and we had some nice chats. And then I stopped by the Personas booth because I wanted to meet Gregor. You're probably familiar with him. And this actually turned out to be an interesting thing because as soon as he saw my last name, he said, oh, I was raised near a Kallenberg in Germany, meaning the mountain. I knew there was one in Vienna. So he's interested in my family heritage. So I'm going to send him a whole bunch of stuff because my great-grandfather was from Eisleben, Germany. And he joined the Union Army way back when, obviously, and was in Grant's army at Vicksburg and Lookout Mountain, I think, and Chattanooga and the Battle of Stones River. But anyway, yeah, he was really interested in the fact that my Germanic background and whatnot. I'm sorry I didn't get on in time to say this to Tina. She's probably working with a very good friend of mine named Pedro Eustache, who does all that dudek stuff with Zimmer, and I want to know if you knew him. But the other thing, she made this remark, which I thought and you all know this, Christian, because when you talked about the missed note.
Yes.
My advice to young people is, if you're going to be an actor, God forbid that you're an actor, never look at yourself in a film or television show. Every time, I've got some old talent reels, which I could send to you if you want, but I see stuff and I think, my God, why did I make that choice? And, it's too late because it's sort of like saying, you feel like you're running around naked in front of a bunch of strangers. And so I sympathize with your wrong note problem, but everybody had. And my wife is a painter and she curses her paintings after 6 months. Why did I do that? And I said, look, that's the way it is with creative people. And everybody on here, I bet you, has that problem.
Absolutely.
Why that key? Why that inversion? Why that rhythm? Blah 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 blah. It's the cross you bear when you're creative.
My most common one is, why didn't I go to bed whilst I was mixing that, and finish mixing it in the morning?
I think I've told you this story. It's kind of an axiom that Hemingway had: quit while you're hot.
Yes, absolutely. Quit whilst the tambourines are still bright as well.
Exactly. Go to bed, come back the next day. I've even gotten to the point now, and I'm going to throw the question out there. Particularly because I'm writing for Megatrax, I've decided I'm going to write something, maybe mix it a day or two later. I'll do a rough, write down the bones. But I'm going to take a week or two and not listen to it, to the extent that when I come back to it, I have almost forgotten that I wrote it. So when I'm listening to it, I know it's not possible to recoup your virginity, but at least you can go back after a couple of weeks and say, oh, yeah, that's not bad, or my God, that stinks, whatever. But I'm going to start doing that as a practice and just say, oh.
It reminds me of something that happened to me once, and I think this is one of those unique occurrences. I built up a relationship with a director called John Wright, and he grew frustrated in the feedback that he was giving me, and could see that I tended to make okay decisions, was kind of in tune with his taste. So the last film I did with him, he ordered me off it for a month, which usually is bad news. Usually means they've found someone else to see if they can replace your score or it's tested badly. But he said, will you promise me not to listen to anything you've done for a month? I'd done the first pass, they'd done the fine cut, and there was this hiatus for CGI effects. It was a very effects-heavy film. So he ordered me not to listen to it for a month, and he said, because I know I could give you pages of notes, but I know you'll come back to it and make even better decisions. And it absolutely was a brilliant luxury. Talking about mistakes, I toured with a gentleman called Peter Andre for a spell, and we did this big arena tour, and then we were going to do like some live dates, which were more kind of television-y live dates. And they came to the conclusion that instead of taking the full live band, to take half of the live band to mime to the concert we did at Wembley Arena, including the vocals, absolutely everything. And I did a duet with Peter, just myself on piano and Peter singing, and I hit the most heinous clam midway through and had to mime 5 performances where I made that horrible mistake and apologized to Peter and the rest of the band. And it got to the stage where the band, the very much kind of decimated band, would just turn around to me at the point they knew that this mistake was coming, going like that. It was an absolute nightmare. Roman, or is it Roman? I don't believe we've seen you before.
Yeah. No, I thought I'd pop in and hang out a little bit, and I think we worked on some cool stuff towards the end of last year, or no, maybe like 8 months ago with Cam as well.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
That Roman, how are you doing? You all right?
I'm good. I'm
stuff
good.
we're not allowed to talk about.
You can't talk about it. But
may have some bows and some strings involved, but we're not going to talk about what else is involved.
Yeah, no. Tight-lipped here. But yeah, I still very much wanting to see what we can do with Audio Machine too.
Absolutely.
Those of you guys that don't know me, probably most everyone. I'm a nameless, faceless composer, and I love that.
That's why we got into this, Lark.
That's why we got into this, writing for Audio Machine. But we've got a lot of exciting stuff going on. Can you explain what Audio Machine is? Yeah, we're kind of the #1 boutique trailer music house. And yeah, that's what we did from Paul Dinlatier, who founded it back in the 2000s. And these days we've got our in-house, in-person studio, and trying to use the Crow Hill Perk libraries and stuff like that on get them in some placements. Well, it's fortuitous that you joined us today, because we're launching and just for anyone who's interested, I'll tell you of details, T&Cs for the competition towards the end of this podcast. So stick around for that. But we've launched this competition where people have to rescore a trailer. Do you have any top tips, speaking as someone who's been doing top tier trailers yourself? Oh yeah, I think the trailer stuff, and I think we talked about this when we had those redacted sessions, Christian. But people just don't realize when you think it's big enough, or when you think it's hitting, it's not. They don't realize the things you got to do in the trailer music that everything's counterintuitive to our mixing training, or you know, those of us that maybe came up through the old guard of way of mixing film or scores or anything like that. It's so different, and the things you would do seem really stupid, but if they work, they're not stupid. So when your drums aren't hitting, just throw them through parallel saturation and parallel compression. Put 5 saturators on it and multi-band sidechain compress every frequency possible so that it's doing this dance with stuff. It's just, yeah, you got to make room where there's no room.
But I think that something that I've noticed just by watching many trailers, as we all do, is it's not just about how loud you can get it. It's about the dynamic differences. And it's as much about the spaces in between the loud. I did a video recently about monitoring at correct levels so that you can make sure your quiet is quiet enough so your loud is really loud. And it's not just about piling loads of ideas in. That trailers do tend to carry a narrative arc, don't they?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm sure everyone in this meeting and joining probably knows the 3-act form, right? That's a common thing for people who are in ad and promo and trailer. You know, you've got your intro, you got edit point, you've got act 1, edit point, you've got act 2, edit point, you've got act 3, and maybe a bunch of cuts and stops, and depending on what genre of trailer. But absolutely, you know, you want to make sure that the difference in your soft low points versus your back end, that like high octane act 3, is just so massive that it grabs the attention, it hits, and it feels like you've gone on this journey, right? You're telling a narrative. You're ultimately, you're selling the product, right? If there's no trailer music, it's infinitely less exciting. So
absolutely,
it does need to be there.
And something I wanted to, again, so fantastic that you're online today. Something I wanted to talk about is the impact of non-musicality, how trailers, as part of the kind of trailer trope, I'm sure it's on purpose, sound like often there's hard music edits that don't necessarily follow the music. I think the mistake to make is to try and get a smoothly automated single sequence that often maybe it's worth doing several different bits and then kind of editing it together. I'm sorry, I'm making a mess of this question, but do you know what I'm talking about, Roman?
100%. That it's those starts and stops, right? That we'll call it, and that editors look for, and that really, you know, it give you those moments, right? You have your sound design, your ear candy moments, right? Maybe the music stops in the middle of a phrase, and you've got a downer, or you've got this really interesting like panned riser or something, or even if it's just your signature sound, or like if it's, you know, if it's cello, if it's the cello, if it's just, oh, actually now it's up front, right in your face, dry, all in the clear, nothing else happening. It's, you just have this choppy motion, right? That just editors are foaming at the mouth to cut to.
It's a little bit like Instagram, like just like turning up the saturation, turning up the contrast, maybe more so than real life. It was very interesting today. I did that little segment that we watched earlier, the intro into the trailer. And I said to the editor, just make sure you cut the music hard off on the cut, and then you'll get a suck. And it's really weird to think that something that sounds like a suck isn't a suck until it's finished, but then you register it as a suck. And he goes, I don't understand it. And when he showed it to me, it didn't work because he put a little fade at the end of it, and there was a little reverb tail. But it's got to be absolutely hard. So this is another way you kind of break these rules. So you have all of this washy reverb, but I think the mistake a lot of people make, and I've made in the past, is you have a hard stop, but then you've got all of these reverb tails, which don't give you that.
Oh man, the amount of mute automation or reverb automation in one of our average trailer sessions is immense, right? Because you need to do that. You need those hard outs. You need to create those moments of yeah, just differing level of not just volume, but intensity, musically, whatever it is. So you just have to go so microscopically exact with that stuff to create the excitement and those edit points really is what it is. It's all about.
Something that I
I've got a
really
question for Roman.
Sorry, Charles, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question for Roman. Back when, I want to know what the current trend is. I did trailer voices, trailer voiceover. And when you are encountering the newer stuff, at what point do you even get involved with the voiceover, or do you have the script and then the voiceover is done later? Because I've done both, where I've had to be at the session and I did, sort of the old Don LaFontaine in a world kind of stuff. And then the other part of trailers is the obvious thing. You have the dramatis personae, if you please, the kissing scene, the punch, the whatever. So do you get the footage pre-cut, or do they kind of, I don't know, jazz it, meaning you get it in sections and then you kind of glue it together? What's the current trend? I think that's really what my question is. Do you get the voiceover at all, or do you even know what the voiceover is going to be? So that's the question.
Yeah, that's so huge. And to the benefit of Christian and Crowhill is that everyone's being provided the footage, right, to rescore.
Yeah.
So that's actually not the norm whatsoever, especially these days. When we're doing the trailer stuff, you rarely have any picture or idea. So what people really don't know who aren't in that world is editors are editing the picture to what you write, which is very cool. So it actually it opens up a world of creativity for us. And when you're delivering something, you're going off of their creative brief that says, okay, for the first act, we need it 30 seconds. This is kind of what we want to happen generally. And then through the rest of the form, and up to you to interpret that how you want. And once they're happy with it, we're sending them stems and everything, and they're gonna do their thing, either with the whole mix, full mix sometimes, or take our stems. They're gonna layer their favorite sound design, their favorite hits, right? They're gonna edit to, if they already have a voiceover, if they already have a locked picture, they'll edit our stems to that. But most of the time, it's especially when it's the custom stuff, they're editing to what we've provided them, which is crazy to think.
Sorry, Charles, please carry on.
Very briefly, if you want to beta the voiceover at some point, get a hold of me. Christian knows how to get a hold of me, because I'd be glad to help you. Because I used to do it for a living. And I've got my setup and whatnot. So Christian can send you my details, and then you can get a hold of me if you want some beta voiceover.
That's awesome. Amazing.
Brilliant. Jay, before I come to you, just one last question, Roman, it's really, I'm so surprised to hear that. But then it makes a lot of sense, because so many of these trailer soundtracks are so incredibly creative. That you think, oh my God, how did they think of that with the picture? Whereas if you have more of a free reign, I imagine that's a much more fertile ground for creativity. Talking about, what I'm really excited about with the things that you've said and by doing these trailer challenges is that it does get people to throw everything out the window. I think people do have I'm guilty as charged, have a tendency to read sound on sound, and it tells you how to EQ a kick drum. Whereas I always said, just say EQ until it sounds good. But kind of breaking all of these rules, do you feel that going into that field, being surprised by these rules that you're breaking, you're then taking that into your work outside trailers?
Definitely. I think it permeates in everything, because the doors are blasted wide open to just be as creative as possible and see what sticks. That's what it's about. In production music in general, that's what it's about, right? Just keep writing and see what sticks, what happens, and what if you're the trendsetter or where the trend goes, what you can do with that. But it is really interesting. Yeah, you just throw everything out the window, and just really be as creative and as innovative as you possibly can, right? But you just don't know how that's gonna how that's gonna get used exactly in the finished product. I think I just did I didn't just do, but the trailer that came out for Companion, that's a customized track that I had done, of an Audio Machine track that I did with my wife actually. But that was, they had the stems from that from another pitch and used it for this trailer. And so it's really cool that they've clearly edited in mind and used these stems, used this track for their narrative in a way that I wouldn't have even predicted or known because I wasn't involved with that process.
That's absolutely brilliant. Jay, you had your hand up. You're very out of focus, mate.
Oh, I've been blurry this whole time.
Yeah.
What is going on there? Okay.
It's the old witness protection program.
Just not gonna talk about that one. No, I was gonna mention. Oh yeah, I work sometimes in not exactly advertising, but promo videos for a company that I somehow gathered this job from a coffee shop trip. Not the point. The point was usually what I get, and I find this interesting because in trailer music you apparently do it backwards. Usually what I'll get is almost the final cut with music, and they definitely edit to the music. And every now and then I'll be asked to get the voiceover done after the music is set and after most of the image is set, which is very backwards from what Roman was just mentioning. And I find that very curious, and I don't know if it's maybe a location thing or not, or like just an industry thing, because it's very obviously not a trailer for anything, but it is a promo video for a tourism company or like a beer or product. It's promotion.
Yeah, no,
it's still sort of a trailer.
I can recognize that it's a very different discipline, actually, because I've done a lot of advertising work. I've not done any trailers, but I do enjoy short form because it's the point at which I get to use my DAW the most as an instrument, more so than when I'm actually writing music scores. I don't know if you agree with that, Roman.
100%. And yeah, that's really interesting, Jay, that you bring that up, because the whole ad and promo, yeah, it's very adjacent, but yeah, couldn't be more different in how they're doing this, especially with. It's really interesting because the way that the trailer stuff works, and this is like, this is maybe too much information to digest, but you're having like sometimes in-house trailer editors or 10 different trailer houses cut trailers that are all pitching for the one theatrical trailer, and they're all getting their people who are composers, whether it's Audio Machine, whether it's whoever, right, whoever it might be, individuals or other companies, to make a piece of music for their cut so they can cut to. But these turnarounds are like a day or like 2 days. So you're getting that brief. Yeah, you're getting that brief, and they need it ASAP, and they need the stems, and they're going to cut to it, and they're going to show something to the studio who's making the film. So I think out of the necessity of like how fast it goes. Yeah, Ken's comment.
It's very interesting how I've seen those. I've applied to that kind of thing. It's insane. I do get like deadlines like that when doing these ads, because usually what I do is sound design. Like Foley and sound design for the ads. I get the music. I don't do that much music for this client, but still, it's like it'll be today, Thursday, and he's like, I need it by Friday, and I'm like, Friday's tomorrow. Yeah. We need it by like Monday, fine, then Monday. Like, what? You know what? Sure. But it's usually like they will always give me a full cut before I start working, obviously. And there's always like some change somewhere. How do you guys ever deal with that kind of thing? Like they're like, you know what? We need something totally different because they're changing the entire like film part.
It's the same as scoring, where you can get lucky and have a V1 get approved, or you can somehow go to V17 or V20 because it just keeps changing. And yeah, sometimes you get that locked pick and then it becomes not locked anymore.
And I imagine sometimes sorry, Charles, just one sec. I imagine you often go back to V1 from V17 quite often as well. Should we hear that first one again? Sorry, Charles, after you.
Well, when I was at NAMM, Jay, in the middle of a meeting, the owner of Megatrax got a call that night, Netflix needed whatever they needed in an hour. And when he hung up, he told me the details, and all I said was, whoever made the decision at Netflix should be fired. I was serious, because bad planning on their part is not your problem, period. But I'm a little ruthless when it comes to that kind of thing.
I think certainly at the beginning of one's career, coming in as the cavalry is a very important, will often be, certainly for a lot of composers I've spoken to, that'll be the big break for composers, where maybe someone's been fired, something's gone wrong.
Oh, I agree with you.
Yeah, where something's tested badly, and suddenly no one's available to do it. But it is sometimes crazy. I mean, there was a film I did. I'm not allowed to talk about it, where they actually removed the composer's entire score. They'd dumped his score, but still had to pay for the orchestral sessions, and the director had to attend the orchestral sessions, knowing they weren't going to use even a measure of the music that was being recorded. And I believe he went to the premiere and must have got a nasty shock when his name came up and my music came out. But I had exactly, I think it was from getting the picture, I had 3.5 days to score an entire feature film ready for a band at Air Studios who was also never credited to play. It's absolutely insane. I think an important point, and something...
It wasn't about the composer, though. It was about the person that made the decision.
Of course, Charles. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I think an important point, Jay, that you've made, pointing out these differences. If I was to say something that really delineates between different workflows, will be actually the hierarchies of the different parts of the industry that we work in. It's why television is a very different experience to film, where film, the directors are king, where television is concerned, the producers, the showrunners, and the broadcasters are king. And I imagine with trailers, often the director's not even in the picture. It'll be very much to do with the marketing department of the film company. With computer games, it's like it's totally outsourced. I mean, what's really interesting about computer games is dialogue is often outsourced, and the director won't be present for that. So I think that we get this trickle down that formulates these different workflows and different methodologies of working based on the hierarchy that you're working with, who's paying the bills and who's okaying stuff. I don't know if you agree with that, Roman. And Ken, I will come to you in a sec.
100%. I don't have anything to add to that. As someone in like you, obviously with seniority and more credits in the film and TV world, as someone myself who has done plenty of stuff in that, and my main thing is the trailer music. It's just it's wild to see the difference. Like you said, who is really king? Who are you answering to? Who is making that final call? And who are you trying to appease with what you're actually providing, and are you trying to appease anyone at all? Because in both extremes, you could have like 4 or 5 playbacks with different people on the post-production side, and nothing gets approved for film or TV. On the trailer side, it's like, do I like this track? Great, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ken, sorry, you've had your hand up for a while.
I think it's good. When we were talking about version 1 and 17, I was just going to talk, like, on my very first film, my favorite revision I ever got. It was a horror film, and for the most part, it had a lot of, great action death scenes. My favorite revision was, I got back, I checked my email. The director was like, hey, so we love all this. For 2M3, I think you took this way too seriously. And I'm like, what do you mean? People are dying on screen. Am I supposed to put in some rompus music in there? And he was like, no. If you could just dial back the seriousness. And I'm like, I'll get back to you.
Fix it in post, don't change it in post would be my recommendation to them. Talking about what Charles mentioned about the bad note, I did this film. I'm not going to say what it is, but it was a body swap film, and it was a teen body swap film with a massive amount of cultural appropriation. It was all based around some mythical Aztec statue. And the director was really keen that the statue had a musical leitmotif. And I was brought in as the cavalry on that one, and in fact, basically what it was the production schedule had slipped so madly that the designated composer couldn't complete the score. So it still had a degree of responsibility and vouched for me, gangster style, and it got to the point where actually that composer started ringing me up, going, they are freaking out that they still don't have the sound for the statue, which only appears twice. So the director said, listen, I just want, I've had a suggestion from that other composer that we just come in and maybe it's not a leitmotif, maybe it's not musical, maybe it's just a musical sound that we need. So I just want you to play me every one of your samples that you have and we'll find something. And I was like, what? He went, I just want you to go through every one of your samples. So I started at the top of my EXS list and just literally scrolled through presets, playing every note of the keyboard. And suddenly we hit on these hip-hop kits that I'd made for myself from the records that Scratch DJs buy. And so I was going, none of these are going to be right for an Aztec statue. And I hit this thing, just like, all of that stuff that you'd recognize from Scratch records. And the director went, that's it. And I was like, was it the panpipe thing or the little trumpet thing, the Maceo trumpet thing? I'm going to get so sued for this as well. And went back and he went, no, that's it. And I'm not joking. It was an MC going, break. And there is a film out there with an Aztec statue. Every time the camera pans round, it goes, break, 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 break. I don't know what the director was on, but it's something that I didn't want to watch that film ever again anyway. But it's certainly something that I just was like, oh my lord! I did use a musical saw in that score. That was quite a lot of fun though. Mr. Mark, you've raised your hand. I can't see you, but I can see your hand is raised. How are you doing, Mark Taylor?
I'm doing good. This is going to be very off topic, but I actually do have a question regarding to mixing vocals, and that's the case. Then that's how do you approach that? Because pretty soon, Christian, I'm pretty sure you already know because I told you on your live yesterday that I actually wrote like my very first song, lyrics and everything. Never done that before,
Yeah.
but. Yeah, so I was just wondering how you would approach that because I've never really done it before.
Well, people have different approaches. I'm a particular. I'm married to an amazing lyricist, and so I like to hear the words. So it's whether you see the vocals as part of the band or the key thing that people listen to, which is by and large the case. So one of the things to do is check it with someone who's never heard the song before, certainly the person who hasn't written it. The problem is when you know the words, you can hear the words. It's very good to hear, if you want the lyrics to be heard, to get someone in the room to go, would you be able to write out most of these lyrics? The key is not. I think that there's quite a lazy approach, which is to compress stuff massively, but that will affect the character of the voice. And for me, it's about meticulous automation. And I think it's about going away from it and coming back quite a lot, so not doing it in a single session. But generally with vocals, you need to ride it like a rodeo bull. There's probably a better analogy than that, but that's the one I'll stick with for now. That it's something that, you know, back in the day when I started in this game, we weren't writing automation, we were physically doing it on desks and stuff. And I, first few kind of records or tracks that I was involved with, we didn't even have automation. So you'd actually sit there and rehearse the automation for literally hours, and you'd get the whole band around the mixing desk, and everyone would have maybe one or two faders or a mute button to hit, this, that, and the other. And there'd always be this point where you felt, this is the one, this is it. The rides were just perfect and everything worked. And then someone fucked up the fade at the end, and you'd have to go again. But yeah, that would be my recommendation. It's all about the automation, not just of the levels of the vocal, but you will also find that, say, for example, if a verse is very exposed, it'll sound dry compared to the chorus. So make sure you automate the effects that you put on the voice, and even switch in effects for the chorus. Don't rely too heavily on reverb. Us media composers are splosh heads, but actually most vocal tracks tend to use delays. It gives a sense of scale and space and stereo width without it muddying stuff up. And the other thing to do, which a lot of people miss out on, is EQ your effects. So if you've got a reverb with a lot of bottom end and stuff like that, don't be scared of EQing the effects. Even if in isolation they don't sound as rich and as lovely, it's all about sitting everything into the track. But I treat vocals like I would dialogue. I'm a fan of you hearing them and hearing the complexity of the voice. The other thing to do is, we forget about this a lot. We tend to rely on lots of plugins and all of that kind of stuff. And it might be too late in this instance, Mark, but I think getting a good vocal recording is absolutely key. So auditioning mics to suit singers. I've auditioned mics, where you've got like maybe a C12 that's worth maybe $35,000 on a vocal, and we've gone for a 414, which is $600 or whatever. So it's just about getting a mic that suits the voice, and also, and this is something that I've really kind of picked up on recently, is the mic pre's are so key. I often the example I use is like, imagine buying like a Paul Reed Smith guitar for $6,000 and then just plugging into a $100 amplifier. The net result is going to be very mediocre. So the minute I started using good quality mic pre's was the minute I stopped working so hard on my mixes. I can't hear the difference because I don't have the ears for it, but I can certainly feel the difference. And it's like when I speak to people who play like Stradivarius violins, I go, what makes them sound so good? It's not how they sound, it's how they make you play. And all of these tools that we use, the quality of the tools will simply make your job easier. The other thing is, try not to add stuff in, try not to add EQ, try and use subtractive EQ. And if you find yourself adding loads and loads of plugins, it basically means that probably 3 plugins before you've taken the wrong turn. So don't be scared to just go back to the drawing board. That would be my recommendation. I don't know if anyone else...
Can I jump on this?
Yeah, absolutely, Jay.
From a standpoint of like a person in a band, like I used to be in punk bands and I would do everything. It also depends, keep in mind your style of music. Because, for example, for me, being a punk band, very, very aggressive kind of sounding, very emo kind of thing, I scream a lot, right? So the type of processing that I have to do for my vocals to sit right is very different than if I'm doing like a very folk song kind of singer-songwriter thing. It's very, very different thing. So your style will dictate also what kind of processing you need or don't need to do. And yeah, definitely at some point, if you are using too many plugins, maybe go back and re-record if needed. It's definitely a thing. And comping, do as many takes as you need to get that where you feel like it's good for you, right? Because I don't know if you guys ever seen this Phineas interview talking about how Billie Eilish does her own comps, and she just goes crazy with it. Like, I used to do that, but not like that. Like, she goes very deep into it, and that's but I learned to do that in college, and it's been a lifesaver for when it's this one little word and you have like three of those, and it's like, no, this is a good one. This is a good one. But yeah, keep in mind that another thing that I like to do, and this is like a very Chris Lordology tip for you guys who knows who this is. He mixes Green Day and people like that, the rock scene. Push it. Just one channel strip, SSL channel strip. I'm telling you, this is the channel strip. And if it sounds, if it's not bright enough, push the highs. I do agree with you, Christian, on do a lot of subtracting EQ more than adding, but sometimes you just have to like push it. And who's good? If it sounds good, it is good.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
my takeaway from college. If it sounds good, it is good. Whatever you have to do to get it there, do it. Yeah. But to an extent, like if you're processing too much, maybe re-record. But one channel strip should do enough for you to like set it well.
Good advice, Ethan. And then I'll come to you, Linus. Ethan, you've had your hand up for a while. Sorry, mate. Just need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, there's a delay on that. Yeah, while you're talking about mixing, is that okay if I ask a question about that?
Yeah, sure, of course, yeah.
Yeah, so at the moment, I've got projects up to 150 tracks, and because there's a lot of tracks, a mix can end up becoming muddy, a little bit muddy. A lot of frequencies fighting over each other, and I've been shown a few tricks, sorry. But yeah, I just need some advice on bring these mixes out so that they don't end up becoming muddy. They're not all become muddy, but there's one that I'm working on at the moment that is a little bit, needs a bit more work.
Something I think that you should be aware of is frequency peaking that occurs. Basically, if you're working on a track, there's going to be a lot, and there's a lot of tracks in it. There's going to be a lot of instruments playing the same notes. And that's when it becomes really difficult to manage, because you've got 150 tracks, of which maybe 75 are hitting an A at certain points, if you're in A, for example. So I think being aware of the key that you're in. Conversely, what a lot of people do is, if you're using drums and stuff like that, is to actually make sure that they are in a complementary key. The thing that makes Stuart Copeland's drums sound so amazing is the way that he tunes them. And there's a great interview with him talking about why he tunes his snare and his toms so high. And he goes, they don't sound like John Bonham when he plays. He goes, they don't sound like big old tubs, but by golly, can you hear them? So, I mean, one of the things that I think that is really, I'm a big fan of using a different tracking engineer to a mix engineer, because often what we do is we attach our ego to the sounds and the performances, and actually it's fucking heartbreaking. But often what you have to do is subtractively take away a lot of the richness and the stuff that you love about the various different elements that you've recorded. But it's almost like a layer cake, of these different, you can have a kick drum that has this massive round sound, but actually you probably want the frequency of the kick drum to be above the bass guitar, for example. It sounds counterintuitive, which is why, say, for example, with hip hop, you'll get these very fat kicks, but it's why they'll use a sub bass that sits under the kick. So it can be a bit heartbreaking. One of the reasons when I get a mix engineer to do my orchestral mixes, I cannot be in there whilst they're mixing, because I just hear them stripping out all of these wonderful frequencies and then like panning something that had a huge stereo spread. And that's something that I think is really underused, is pan. It's amazing how, we record everything stereo these days. And if you look at those, like when they break out like old Queen 24 tracks and stuff like that, like for Bohemian Rhapsody, there'll be like a clap track or a choral track that will be in mono, and you can just place it in the mix. So there's a few little pointers. It's so difficult to suggest these hard and fast rules. The other thing as well is again, I don't see people actually looking at the effects that they're applying and mixing those just like you would another instrument as well. So you kind of got everything in the clear, and then you stick a reverb on that is really, really woolly. And in fact, you may just want that for, and don't be scared of bringing the effects, saturations and all of that stuff in and out to give you all the dynamics you need. But I know where you're at. The other thing is the number of times I've said this to people that I've been working with, say at Spitfire Audio. I remember doing it a few times with Homai, was just go to bed, give it a couple of days, come back, and it'll all be clear as day. We all get tired. Linus has had his hand up for a long time, and sorry, Linus, I didn't get to you sooner. But thanks for that, Ethan.
Thank you.
I was gonna do 2 tips on the vocal production thing. Dubbing. If you can get them tight, then I'm all for it. If you can't get them tight, they'll ruin the vocals. It gets sluddery. I'm speaking right now. You need to keep it down on the dubs on the verses, and you can push it far on the choruses, and that will make them fly. That will be one of my tips.
Linus, could I interrupt? What do you mean by dubbing?
Yeah, if I record the vocals like 3 times, and I would keep one centered, one at the left, one panned right, and the thing is, if you manage to get the vocals really at the same timing, you get that tight, it will be a natural chorus. If you don't get it, it will just be muddy. So if you can't get them to sit tight, then just skip it, because it will be better off to just have a single mono center. But if you can get there are vocal line and other plugins like that, they can tighten stuff. Some DAWs have it built in also. But if you can use tools like that, it will help you to make a really fat chorus vocal.
Sorry, Linus, you carry on. Sorry, I'm a chatterbox. Please carry on.
Yeah. And the second thing I thought of is I've noticed that it's hard to keep track on several elements at once. So if I have a really heavy singing vocal, I tend to not to put, like you said about automation, tend to maybe choose one musical element that rides along with the vocal. And if there's a pause in the vocals, bring on that brass stabs or whatever you have as a second element. But I can't I call it the focus track. I can't keep my mind off more elements than 2 tracks at once.
Yeah, there's correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Walter Murch, who is just a seminal sound designer, mixer, and director and editor himself. I mean, not a musical producer, but a sound department guy. Walter Murch has this thing where he suggests that you can't really make out 5 different things simultaneously, so has a rule. And what I notice with, is it 3? Thanks, Jay. What I notice with the difference between American dubs and British dubs is British dubs are really complicated. They have so many layers. And I think that we have, particularly with trailers and stuff, we have a kind of euphoric recall on stuff being big as being complicated. And I think you can get a lot of lessons from like really massive pieces of like classical music, like that piece of Prokofiev, dum da dum da dum da dum da dum da dum da dum dum. You think now something like that is going to be really complex and really complicated. You listen to it, it's just an enormous orchestral unison. I think there's maybe a couple of harps doing some kind of counterpoint, but I think that that's one of the mistakes that we often make. And I know that this is Rick Rubin's big thing, is he just comes in and hits your mute buttons. And I think that often will be the solution is okay, well, if you want the choruses to sound bigger and everything is redlining, just make sure you go down to the vocal and acoustic guitar in the verse, and you don't have some bass playing way too far up the neck. Roman, you were nodding there.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, just and it's kind of related to even like Ethan's mixing thing with the 150 tracks and all these things, right? These philosophies of the three layers or 3 elements. I mean, like you said, Prokofiev, Tchaikovsky, they all do it, right? You think of, oh, it sounds so massive and huge and beautiful and complex, and if you study the score, you see, oh, actually every choir of the orchestra is just doing the same thing in different inversions. There's like 3 different things happening. Same with if you're doing like a big epic track with 150, tracks or 200. Sometimes I have that in the trailer world if it's like orchestra plus hybrid, like all this stuff. Other times, like Christian just said, like my tracks are 15 tracks, but it's a big trailer track. It's because everything has room and every sound has been chosen intentionally with what frequency it occupies. Oh, this is my sub, this is my bass, this is my punch in the 200 hertz. Everything is so meticulously chosen that you don't need tons of elements. And then sometimes you need all those elements, and you got to do the cleanup, right? You got to do the EQing, subtractive EQ, and like I mentioned, the multi-band sidechain compression. If you've got Pro MB, just put that on every track and find which tracks need, like, this is being sidechained to the bass. This bass is being sidechained to the hits. This hits is being sidechained to the strings. And so you just get this dance of like, you're not losing anything in the frequency spectrum. Actually, the strings are by themselves. You get this fat sound, but once everything else is in, you see your sidechain compressor doing this like crazy thing, and now there's room.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can also like check it in pop music. You also will see those 3 things. There's 3 things happening at once: drums, vocals, and something. And even when something else comes in, like a new guitar part, something will leave. And there's just 3 things going all, like at every point, there's 3 things, tops. The other thing you can do, just, start hitting mute button, see where you're getting the mud from. Because sometimes things that you think need a lot of low end don't need a lot of low end. As a bass player, just don't get in my section. I have a frequency spectrum. Get away from it.
Players.
And the bass sounds better. It does. But I tend to cut low end on everything so that I make room for kicks and basses. Gonna plug a teacher here, Akash Thakar. He's a video game sound designer. Has a YouTube channel, and he does this HMLS technique, he calls it. Basically is when you're designing a sound, or in this case a section of music, highs, mids, lows, and style. So what is living on your high end, what is living on your mid range, what is living on your low end, and then you have a layer of sparkles, like call it frosting on top. And that has helped me also, like, I make really cool things that are big sounding, but it's 4, 5, 8 tracks, things like that. And sometimes you don't have to layer that much to make it really sound big.
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule that I'm learning in life is if you encounter a problem, simplification, not even 9 times out of 10, I'd say 999 times out of 1,000 is always the way. I think complication is always a sign that maybe there's been a poor decision somewhere before. I use a terrible analogy. It's like you wouldn't put lipstick on a baby. It's something. It's fine. It's not abusive, but it's just something a little bit not right about it. And I think that the problem I've had, and I'm speaking not in direct reference to you, Ethan, at all. I am a kitchen sinker, and it's all to do with my lack of faith in the music. I think it was actually when I became a dad, and I didn't put lipstick on my children when they were babies. When I became a dad, I came to the conclusion that my only way of feeding them was by writing music, even though I thought the music that I wrote was shit. And as a consequence, I gave up trying to impress myself and started to just go, well, people seem to keep booking me for the same 3 chords that I always play. And yeah, I'm going to take it up a minor third when people get bored of that cue, and that's my trick. And I just think as a general rule, simplification is always the way. When you listen to, I mean, in the 1990s when I was cutting my teeth, there was this R&B guy called Babyface, and his tracks were so ridiculously minimal. I admired, and this is probably not the right word, but I admired what I would call it was arrogance. And actually on reflection, now I'm 53 years old and it's 2023, is it 2025? 5 shit. The years start strafing by, I promise you that. I don't see it as arrogance, I see it as confidence in the performance and all of that kind of stuff. You've got your hand up. Is it Alex? Sorry, the screen's really small, so I can't see the names that clearly.
Hello. Yes. Hi. I just wanted to, if possible, pick up on a couple of little points that have been made in the conversation, but it's all moved on a little bit. But
no, please go back
to Mark's question about, he was talking about mixing vocals. A great technique was told to me at one point, and I think it's a really good. It's just a little thing that if you're just not getting your vocals mixing or they're not cutting through, just turn everything like your master. Just turn it right down. And just get it to the point where you can barely hear anything. And if you can't hear your vocals then, just peeping through, then something's wrong. Whether it be EQ or effects or overall level or whatever. Because often when you're working to a deadline and you've got everything's going, your ears are tired. And of course, another option for that is just to have a break. But is that if you get everything down to a lower level, your ears just work better at a lower sound pressure level. And just to get everything down and just to hear everything at that, I mean, I've done it where I've just gone down, I can barely hear it. And it's just really, really useful way of just getting things into touch, because it's less overwhelming for a start when everything's that quiet, and then, yeah, just try that and then bring it up again, mix it a bit more, take it down again. And again, obviously to what Christian was saying about all the various different things you can do with effects and EQ and that sort of stuff, all completely relevant. But I think just sometimes just looking after those ears, realizing that they're mechanical and just giving them a little bit of a break, is very wise. And the only other little thing is that you mentioned briefly about instances where composers have been working on trailers or scores or whatever, and they've discovered right at the last minute that their stuff hasn't been used, And a great example of that I wanted to pop in was the composer Alex North, who wrote the original soundtrack or the original score for the 2001 Space Odyssey movie. And he only found out at the premiere that it wasn't used, that Kubrick had decided to go with classical music and completely recut the film with that. Personally, I think, it's a horrible thing horrible thing to do to Alex North, I think, but bad behaviour, you know. But wow, you know, what an iconic film, which probably was ultimately a good decision, you know, because look how iconic the film was. But and just as an offside, the score has been re-recorded since in the sort of mid to late noughties by the now past wonderful Jerry Goldsmith. So that was my little two penneth.
Oh no, thank you. That's such a brilliant contribution. And in fact, there is a version of Jerry Goldsmith's original score for Alien, which Jerry Goldsmith went with a Straussian massive overture for the appearance of the Nostromo. And again, similar story. He went to the premiere and it's like, what the fuck is my music from a Sigmund Freud film doing over this massive spaceship? And I think that's one of those problems, possibly when the effects slates aren't all in place. It's like, well, this is going to be a tiny little model, so I'm going to make it sound absolutely massive. But Ridley Scott made the just genius thing is it's not about the spaceship, it's about where they are and how remote they are. So the music has to sound really lonely and minimal. And again, talking about simplification, what do we remember from the Alien score? We remember that... and it's less notes than the flute players actually played because it's got this echo rec echo on. So it's just da da. Yeah. That's all it is, but with a on it. Yeah.
Wonderfully referenced, I think, by Benjamin Wolfinch in his score to Alien Romulus recently as well.
I really enjoyed his score for that, and I think that is a testament to what Roman has been talking about. There's some really amazing traditional elements that, to me, celebrate cinema and the cinematic tradition, and then just occasionally, just a fuck off synthesizer that the sound department must have loved him for, because it's like, let's mute all of this crap and we're just going to go with the Moog. And it's so effective, so dynamic. I think Ben did an absolutely brilliant job on that.
Can I maybe say one brief thing? You just mentioned Jerry Goldsmith again, that talk about going for synthesizers. Another Ridley Scott film, Legend, was originally scored by Jerry Goldsmith, and you can actually buy that score. You can get that online or whatever. And of course, they dumped that in favour of a Tangerine Dream score, didn't they?
Absolutely.
So the synthesizer one in that one.
Yeah, which was problematic because the whole thing was shot in a studio, not on location. And I don't think the synthesizer score helped that suspension of reality at all. One of the very interesting ones, and this film has aged so well. They've got the original print, which is very desaturated. They decided to resaturate the score for the print for the release, but they've now got a desaturated print, and it's to check out the 1984, the one with John Hurt in. It is such a sublime film, but exactly the same thing happened. Virgin got involved late in the day and insisted they replace the score with the Eurythmics. And it's kind of quite interesting because the Eurythmic stuff doesn't really match the grittiness of the imagery, but they kept in the original composer's theme for the Ingsoc theme, which is just the most amazing piece of music. And it would have been very, very interesting to have heard his interpretation of that. There's some really interesting stories. I mean, I'd like to say that these things were uncommon, but they're really not. And I mean, what my worst nightmare, again, just taking us on a full arc back to Charles' original comment about, that bad note. You never have control over what they do with your stems. And there is a French film called Les Fils de Vent. It's a bass jumping film. And the woodwind stem slipped out by, I'd say, less than a beat, but more than is musical or lazy. So the whole woodwind stem is out by almost a 16th for the entire climax, which is, I think it was a cue that was 16 minutes long. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking because only us musos would hear, what the fuck was Henson thinking with this stuff? So that is something that I can't return back to. I think on this note, I just want to bring us back to the competition that we've launched. And I've got some instructions from our fantastic head of community and network here behind the camera, Simon. So if you want to take part in this composing challenge, Tina has agreed not only to offer us her time as a prize, but also has suggested that she does judge the final winner from a shortlist that will be compiled from the excellent composers that we have working here at Crow Hill. So if you visit the composing challenge page on our website, which is, if you go to the website and then it's / composing - challenge, or for us English folk, composing - challenge. If you download the trailer, rescore using any instruments you like, live or virtual. I think we've, for those of you who have watched this podcast, I think Roman has given you some good tips there. I think I would really encourage you to break all of the rules that you can. Use your DAW like an instrument and be dynamic. Think about the light and shade, but also what we've been talking about, the power of simplicity and how that single super fat sound or that single lonely sound compared to a massive kind of wall of layered stuff, how effective that can be, the light and the shade. Then just send it to demos@thecrowhillcompany.com by the 2nd of March, which I believe is the last Sunday of the kind of shortened February. That doesn't make any sense. 2nd of March. Tina will pick a winner and 2 runners up from Crow Hill picked shortlist, and it will be announced on this live stream on the 6th of March. The winner will receive this hour's remote session time with Tina. So you'll send her some music. She'll send you back some stuff. She likes to work in a solitary mode, so you'll send her stuff. Often she'll be on tour. She'll do it remotely. You'll also win what we'll be releasing after Tina's library for the next 12 months. The 2 runners-up will also receive that same prize of everything that we're going to be releasing over the next 12 months, of which Jay has enjoyed getting Tina's library for free, even if it did make him burn his toast. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Do join us. We're here every week just to have a blether. Don't know where the conversation's going to go. And I think that hope you all agree there's been some just brilliant contributions. So I thank you all for coming online, and see you next week, same time, same place, 1900 hours GMT for Fellowship of the Ring Pull. See you later.